Good morning, MCS community, students, staff, parents. I really have to think what an enormously stressful and difficult week it was last week, but I really hope you've had a good weekend and you've had a good rest and that things are beginning to normalise a bit. How bizarre it's been. We went from level 2 to level 3 to level 4. Suddenly we're in lockdown. We went from social distancing, which we were just getting used to, through to self-isolating bubbles. Hope your self-isolating bubble is going well and everybody's getting on. Going to school became remote school. Teaching in a classroom for our teachers became teaching remotely and students working from home. And for parents, going to work has become working from home and managing your children at the same time. And I hope that's not too stressful. So look, I hope everybody is well. I hope and pray that students, that your learning is going well. I get good reports from teachers and from parents that I've had contact with. Parents, I hope that working from home and managing the kids is going okay and not driving you crazy. And I hope that everybody's jobs are secure, and if anyone is struggling at this time, I hope that the government's help is available and is proving to be helpful at this time. Of course, none of us know what the future will hold. None of us know, but we do trust God. There's an enormous amount of sacrifice being made by everybody in our country, I think, at this time. And my prayer is that it is effective. This lockdown requires a lot of sacrifice. It will come at a big cost, but it should be effective if we take it seriously and follow the rules. So, suggestion is, instead of complaining about needing to self-isolate, let's thank God that we have the opportunity to self-isolate before this virus goes crazy in our country, and pray that it doesn't go crazy in our country. Instead of looking for ways to get around the regulations, look for loopholes, let's look to do this as well as we possibly can to give our country the best opportunity to get through this coronavirus thing with minimal casualties. Now, speaking of sacrifice, it does remind me of another sacrifice that was made 2,000 years ago. And yes, of course, I'm speaking about Jesus. I'd like to tell you a little story about a true story about a man who worked on a rail bridge. His job was to lower the bridge so trains could cross, and then raise the bridge again so that boats could get up and down the river. And that's what his job was. And one day his young boy, came to work with him. And he heard a train approaching, and he thought, right, I have to go and lower the bridge. And then to his horror, he realised that his young boy was playing under the bridge. Not only was he playing under the bridge, he was playing in the gears, the cogs that mesh together as the bridge is lowered. And he knew in that moment that he had a choice. He could either run and get his son and save him and get him out of the way, or he could lower the bridge. But he wasn't going to do both, because if he ran to save his boy, the train would arrive and it would crash and everyone would probably die. He had a choice to make. Now, this is a true story. He knew that he needed to save the lives of everybody on board that train, so he lowered the bridge. And his son died. And the train crossed the bridge, and people looked casually out the window. Some looked at him. They were bored, they were disinterested, they were unconcerned. And he looked back at them, and he had just, by one act of amazing sacrifice, he had saved all of their lives. But they didn't know, and of course they didn't care because they didn't know. Now, that is not a perfect picture of what God did for us in sending Jesus to earth, because Jesus voluntarily laid his life down. He knew. He wasn't taken by surprise. He chose to lay his life down to save us. But we are in no better state than those people on that train heading towards certain disaster, because we as people need God's forgiveness. In 2 Corinthians 5 verse 21, the Apostle Paul tells us this. He says, God made him who had no sin be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. So that in him we might become the righteousness of God. So, friends, I want to ask you, are you in him? Are you in Christ? Are you in Christ, or is Christ just a concept or a historical figure or somebody you've heard about or somebody you even believe in? Are you in Christ? And as we approach Easter, let's consider, is the sacrifice that Jesus made, is it effective in your life? Just as we want the sacrifice that we're all making in the coronavirus outbreak, we're wanting the sacrifice to be effective. And so, this week, one self-isolated principle is praying for a great week for everybody, despite the inconvenience, despite the uncertainties, despite the risks. And I pray that we will all learn, students, we will learn, parents, that our morale will be good. I pray that God will use these uncertain times to do a good work in each of us. Thank you and have a great week.